Hi everybody, I'm Brendan here with Common Motor. That's common-motor.com on the internet, and today we're working on the CT90 or the Trail 90, and we're going to show you how to set the ignition timing. Stay tuned. We've gone ahead and removed the cover from the points right here, and the points are located at the cylinder head here on the CT90. And we're going to be doing a ignition timing adjustment as part of our regular tune-up interval maintenance schedule. We like to do this every 1,000 miles, and Honda specs like 3,000 miles intervals. I do them at 1,000 mile interval along with the oil change because it doesn't take long for points to go out of adjustment. And these little bikes run fast and hard, so adjusting it more frequently means your bike's gonna run better. Now, in this particular bike, we don't know the condition of the points, we don't know the condition of the advance mechanism, so we're gonna get in there and take them apart and clean them and inspect them before we do any adjustment, make sure they're good to go. We do have a video talking about how to clean and lubricate an advance mechanism, so make sure you check that out. I also want to point out one final piece. This is the last part of the tune-up interval sequence domino effect, where we have the cam chain adjustment first, and then we have the valve adjustment, and then we have the ignition timing adjustment, which are all related to each other, and this is kind of the end of the equation here. Yeah, so let me just take it apart and we'll get into it and get everything clean and lubed, and then we'll actually do an adjustment. That was a nice one, a little tiny washer. So you can see this one was notched by somebody, but it was still too tight, so I had to take the points apart to remove the wire. It's okay. The screws are a bit chewed up here. Drop them, just take it apart, drop it. All right, here's our points. All right, there you go. Advance mechanism. Well, I got it out real quick. It looks pretty clean, but we'll go ahead and grease it anyway. I also want to note that in the CT90, there's the drive pin there. Right now I have it at about 12 o'clock. Make sure it's in place, that you can't fall out. Just be mindful of it when you take the stuff apart. I want to point out my steel dots here. They're in line with this notch up here. That's the correct orientation of the cam. And there. We have reassembled the greased, cleaned the advance mechanism here. Went ahead and kind of cleaned and lubricated the set of points. Actually, in this bike, the set of points was in good shape, so we're going to reuse them. I cleaned the contacts, we removed the rocker and greased that up, so we got plenty of lubrication in here. And we went ahead and replaced our shoot-up JS bolts with some nice Allen bolts to make it easier to adjust in the future. It is a note that this bolt right here is very particular. It has to go in perfectly straight. And the washers have to be stacked just right so it does clear the rocker arm right there. And we readjusted and reinstalled our points wire here. Note that the wire terminal itself, we have to make sure it only touches the bolts. It doesn't touch this part of the point body. It doesn't touch the plate because it will cause a grounding situation, and that it also is not like wedged up between here and the red washer. Sometimes you see people do that, so be very careful about how that terminal is installed on that little bolt there. And we're going to actually go ahead and set the gap first on the points. Oh, I also want to point out our clocking of this plate. If you note that we have a little hole, little doodad right there, it kind of points at that. Also, this notch here being centered with this part of the casting right there. So that's kind of our preliminary position for setting the timing and the points adjustment. So to set the gap, I'm going to take the engine, I'm going to rotate it, and notice I lift this bolt off of here, and we have these two little tick marks right here. You see that? These two little tick marks indicate the highest spot on the cam, and we're going to line those up with the foot of the rocker or the follower here to set the actual point gap. This is independent of the timing. It is only setting the gap. So let's rotate our motor here over so we get it into that spot. Right there. That's where I want it to be. Yeah. You can see that our points are open, and we're going to set that gap right now with a feeler gauge, and that gap is supposed to be between 12 to 16 thousandths. I have a 12 here. I'm just going to come in with the 12 and set that gap, and that's loose right now. So I'm going to wiggle that. So I'll loosen these up a little bit. This is where the Allen wrench make it so much easier to move this thing around. Open that up just a little bit. There, like that. Now I'm just putting a little pressure on my finger here. Just take a little bit of load off. Actually, if you look at the feeler gauge, you can see it wiggles just a hair. I just want a little bit of pressure on it. So you can snug that down right there. Snug that down right there. Let's have a feel. It's a little bit loose. It's probably okay, but we'll go ahead and get it just absolutely perfect for, I mean, just the spring pressure right now is pinching on the feeler gauge. Let's see how that feels. Still even a little bit. Get a little bit even. It's not good now. Let's loosen that up some more. Just kind of let it find its own spot. It feels too tight now. That's not bad. We're good. I'm gonna call it quits there. I mean, that'll work. The main thing is that we're not forcing the feeler gauge through and getting that rocker to move, and I'm feeling for that any movement on the rocker, and I don't have it, so that's good there. So we'll call it quits. I don't want to over tighten these. That's why I'm using the small end of this wrench here, but that's good. Okay, gap is set. I'm gonna go ahead and put my bolt that holds my advance mechanism back in place. Snug that down. And now we'll we'll set up to do the timing here in just a moment. Our point gap is now set, and the second part of setting this up in the ignition is set the timing. And what the timing is we're trying to adjust the position of the point here on this plate back and forth to synchronize fire the spark plug at a certain spot. And that spot is when this F mark here on the rotor lines up with this little index mark here on that stator coil on the compression stroke. So when the engine spins around, those two line up on the compression. The point's open and triggers the coil, which triggers the spark plug, which means the engine should run. So it's a series of events. So all the points are is an on-off switch. We're just going to open and close them on-off. We just got to make sure they trigger on and off at the correct place or at the correct time. That's why it's called timing. So the first task in this is to establish compression stroke approaching the F mark. I have the spark plug out of the engine here, so I'm just going to reach my hand around and put my finger over the spark plug hole. I'm going to turn the engine and find the spot where the compression is there. Well, I feel it right there. You hear it? That's it right there. I can tell you that. We'll go around again just to confirm. All right. I can feel it there. Because remember, the crankshaft spins, the camshaft spins at half the speed of the crankshaft. No pressure there. Now I'm starting to feel it. My finger here. Yeah, so this is the compression stroke. So what we want is when that F mark, you can actually just hit your fingers on this engine, lines up there, you want the spark plug to fire. So how do we know when the spark plug fires? I want to bring that back just about right there on the point gap. We're going to use a test light to determine when does the electricity go from one side of the switch, which is all the points are, to the other. Now you can do this with the battery in the bike. The battery in this bike is dead right now, so we're going to do it with an external battery. And we also have the key off. We have the kill switch off on this particular bike, so we're not going to be really connecting to anything else in the circuit. If you're unsure about your circuit, you can go ahead and unplug this wire here, but make sure that that end terminal here doesn't touch anything metal on the body, which is ground. You can watch our video about ground circuits if that's something you want to get into and understand more deeply. All right, so here's how I'm going to do this setup. So I have an external battery right here. It's charged up. I'm going to take a small jumper and I'm going to connect it very specifically to, in this case, that terminal, the points wire. I'm also making sure it doesn't touch the plate and doesn't touch the part of the points body there. I'm going to connect that to the positive side of the battery. Now I have my test light. I'm going to connect it to the negative side of the battery, and I'm going to touch it to the engine. That says we got power running through the points. In fact, I'm just going to wedge it up here. All right, so we got our test light on. It's on, which means our points are touching, and if the points are open, the test light would turn off. Now, we're using the external battery, and we're trying to find the spot where the point's open and the battery's on. We're doing this as a series circuit, right? But if you're trying to do this with the battery in the bike and you have the test light connected to ground and to this terminal, when the points are closed, the test light will be off because power will be going through the coil, and not the test light. When they open, the test light kicks on because it becomes the path of least resistance, and it's a parallel circuit. You can do it either way. We're just trying to figure out when do we make contact and not contact. I like doing it this way because it's simpler, and I'm not worried about cooking my ignition coil because it's isolated from other parts of the electrical system. Now I'm going to rotate this rotor. I'm going to use my fingers. The Trail 90 is such a lightweight engine. I want to find the spot where that test light just kicks off. Now, there's my F mark, so it's not there, so we're past it. Right there. So you can see that's the spot where it wants to kick on and kick off. And if I look at the position of my mark on the rotor, it's actually even past top dead center there, which tells me that the ignition needs to be advanced to trigger earlier in the system. So I'm gonna back that up a hair. Over there, we can go ahead, I'm just gonna unplug take the test light out of there. And we're gonna move the plate. So the engine spins this direction, so we want to advance the timing. We're going to move the plate clockwise. In fact, that's pretty loose. We can just do that with our finger. But sometimes you can use the screwdriver. Doesn't matter. Let's snug it down. Let's see what we got. As we get it a little closer, we gotta get dialed in. We'll put our test light back in place here so we can see what's going on. Where do I have it wedged in there? The test light's on. It's connected to the ground. All right, same exercise. I'm gonna creep up on that F mark. Now you can use a wrench, but I can use my fingers too. Let's see when that light turns off. It's better than that. So it moved a bit. Now we're up between the T and the F, but we need to go further on the adjustment. Move the plate some more. All right, so we're gonna advance the plate a little bit more. Like right there. See what happens. Snug that down. Snug that down. And also, the plate has some slop in it. And you're moving it, the position will change. All right, we're still back on. Let's creep up on that F mark. Let's see when this thing turns off. Oh, look at that. We're pretty close. Look at that. F mark. Almost there. Like we're a little bit advanced. So basically we're triggering off just before the F mark. Now we could work with that, but let's get it on the money, but it's a lot closer to where we want it to be. Back it off a hair, unhook it, bump it back just a little bit. I bet you we'll be on the money. In fact, it just kind of moved on its own a little bit. I loosened it up, so let's try that. All right, I'm gonna creep on the slow. We're gonna find out where that spot is. So we know we're pretty close. Nice and slow on the F. Nice and slow, nice and slow, and all right, we're a little bit past now. See that? So we kind of are teetering on either side of the mark there. We're really close. I'm gonna bump it back a hair, but you can see how we're on the other side of the mark now, where the light's kicking on and off. So I don't want to be there. In fact, where we were before was a better spot. We want it to be there. So let's give it another go. I've been fiddling with it a little bit now, and I actually got it pretty close. It's probably about as close as we're gonna be able to get this, and it's gonna be fine. It triggers off just a hair before, like we're kind of on that cusp there. I mean, ideally, I want it to be like right there, like on the money, perfect. But it's, you know, a little bit of slop in the system there. That's pretty good. So we'll call it quits there. And so that means the bike's gonna run fine. And we're gonna have slop in the system from the cam chain, we're gonna have slop in the system from the advanced mechanism. So I'd rather be a hair advanced than a hair after the fire mark. Put a little bit of grease here on that cam because that rocker rides against it. Make sure that stays good and lubricated because it moves a lot and sees a lot of action. Got the covers back on our CT90 with some fresh gaskets, so it should be good to run. I want to close with 3 points that are very important for ignition timing on CT90s here. The first point is service interval. I like to set ignition timing every 1,000 miles, which is also the same service interval for the oil change, cam chain adjustment, and valve adjustment. So I like to do them all together, although again, Honda publishes it to be a bit longer. the more frequently you do it, the better your bike's gonna run, which leads me to point 2. When the ignition timing is spot on the money, you got that gap right, and you got the timing set on the F mark, these bikes start very easily. We're talking 2 to 3 kicks pretty much every time. Now, this is a kickstart only bike. This leads me to part 3 I want to emphasize. The ignition systems on this bike, or at least what powers the coil, is a battery. This is a battery ignition bike, and so your battery has to be fully charged and new. This is not a magneto bike. A lot of people think that a magneto is like what a lawnmower has. You pull the cord and it generates spark and it goes. Some dirt bikes are that way. Some other bikes are set up with magneto systems. If you don't have a strong, healthy battery in one of these bikes, you're gonna be kicking it forever and it's not gonna start. So that's the other part of the equation, even if the timing is perfect. So keep that in mind, and all those aspects of why this is so important to do, but also have a good battery in your bike too. There you have it. The ignition timing is complete on CT90. As we said earlier, this is part of the regular tune-up process in one of these bikes. So keeping your ignition timing on the money will make sure that your bike always starts with just a few kicks every single time. As always, this is Brendan with Common Motor, common-motor.com on the internets. Make sure you follow us on social media, that's Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our newsletter through our website at commonmotor.com. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you ring the bell for notifications, and we'll see you next time.